Syria's civil war is back in the spotlight after a new rebel coalition launched a surprise attack, sweeping into the country's second-largest city, Aleppo. The offensive is the first time opposition forces have seized territory in Aleppo since 2016, shattering the stalemate of a war that never formally ended. The renewed conflict, which has killed more than 300,000 and sent nearly 6 million refugees out of the country, also has wide ramifications across the region and beyond. At the height of the Arab Spring in 2011, pro-democracy demonstrators took to the streets in Syria calling for the ouster of its authoritarian President Bashar al-Assad. Syria's civil war began during the 2011 Arab Spring as the regime suppressed a pro-democracy uprising against Assad, who has been president since 2000. During a decade of war after 2011, Bashar al-Assad's rule survived because he was prepared to break Syria to save the regime he had inherited from his father. The country plunged into a full-scale civil war as a rebel force was formed, known as the Free Syrian Army, to combat government troops. The conflict swelled as other regional actors and world powers, from Saudi Arabia, Iran, the United States to Russia, piled in, escalating the civil war into what some observers described as a proxy war. The war in Syria did not end. It dropped out of the place it used to occupy in headline news, partly because of turbulence across the Middle East and beyond, and because it is almost impossible for journalists to get into the country. Now a coalition of rebel groups, led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham (HTS), has broken out of Idlib, the province along the border with Turkey that it controls, and in only a few days since the 27th of November swept away Syrian troops in a series of astonishing events. The opposition forces, decentralized, made up of different ideologies, but with a common goal of toppling Assad, was supported in various ways by foreign powers including neighboring Turkey, regional giants Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, as well as the United States. As the anti-government forces grew, Syria's allies Iran and Russia stepped up their support. On the ground, Iran's Revolutionary Guard as well as its Lebanese proxy Hezbollah helped fight the armed rebel groups. In the skies, the Syrian Air Force was bolstered by Russian warplanes. Extremist Islamists including al-Qaeda took an interest in Syria, taking up a common cause with the moderate Syrian opposition who did not welcome jihadist involvement. But by 2014 the extremists dominated and ISIS began sweeping across the country. Fearing Syria would become a permanent terror hotbed, an international coalition led by the US stepped in with a focus on eliminating the group but without confronting the Syrian regime. In 2020, Russia and Turkey agreed a ceasefire in the last remaining opposition-held province, Idlib, agreeing to establish a security corridor with joint patrols. Why has the conflict reignited now? The offensive began on Wednesday after rebels formed a new coalition called the Military Operations Command. They quickly swept through villages outside Aleppo and residents have now said they control much of the city, meeting little resistance on the way. The fighters say they are seeking to liberate occupied territory and were responding to stepped-up attacks from government forces and pro-Iranian militia groups. The rebels may be seeking to capitalize on a weakened government whose key allies are heavily preoccupied with other conflicts. In response to the rebel advance, the Russian and Syrian air forces launched an aerial offensive in Aleppo and Idlib provinces. Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022 and has plowed manpower and resources into the war. Russia is Assad's main partner in the sky. In just over 72 hours last week, a coalition of Syrian armed rebel groups operating under the banner of deterrence of aggression captured the city in a surprise attack, dealing a significant blow to Assad. Here are some of the groups forming the coalition. The most prominent and formidable one of those rebel groups is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham (HTS), also known as the Organization for the Liberation of the Levant. HTS was founded by Abu Muhammad al-Julani, a military commander who gained experience as a young fighter for al-Qaeda against the United States in Iraq during the US invasion before his capture and imprisonment in Iraq. Upon his release, he traveled to Syria to create Jabhat al-Nusra, al-Qaeda's Syrian affiliate and operated the group until a public split with al-Qaeda in 2016 over ideological differences and opposition to ISIS. Julani then formed HTS in early 2017. Despite Julani's effort to distance his new group from al-Qaeda and ISIS, the United States and other Western countries designated the HTS a foreign terrorist organization in 2018 and placed a $10 million bounty on him. Over the years, Julani's influence grew despite bouts of infighting and local rivalries. Rebel groups were delivered a severe blow after the loss of Aleppo to the Syrian regime in 2016. HTS was constricted to Idlib, a city in northwestern Syria with a population of 4 million, mostly those displaced by the infighting across Syria. One main coalition group taking part in the offensive on Aleppo is the Syrian National Army, an umbrella group incorporating dozens of factions with various ideologies that receive funding and arms from Turkey. That coalition has become a proxy group for Turkey, and includes the National Liberation Front, which includes factions like Ara al-Sham, whose stated aims are to overthrow the Assad regime and establish an Islamic state governed by Sharia law. Experts consider Ara al-Sham to be a moderate Islamist group. After last week's capture of Aleppo, the group's deputy commander Ahmed al-Dalati gathered Muslim leaders in a mosque to deliver instructions and called on them to protect ethnic and religious minorities of the city. Kurdish forces have been embroiled in a long-running conflict with Turkey. In its decades of tension with the Kurdish fighters, Turkey launched several military operations against the Kurdistan Workers' Party (PKK), a militant group that Turkey deems terrorist. Syrian rebels have launched a large-scale attack on regime forces in western Aleppo, according to a Free Syrian Army source and local residents, marking the first major flare-up in years between both sides. Opposition factions announced the offensive Wednesday on their Telegram channel, calling it the deterrence of aggression, and claiming it was a response to recent artillery shelling from the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Rebels seized 13 villages, including the strategic towns of al-Shubra and Anjara, as well as Base 46, the largest Syrian regime base in western Aleppo, according to a Wednesday statement by opposition factions. The leader of HTS, Abu Muhammad al-Julani, has a long history as a jihadist leader in Iraq and Syria. In recent years, though, he has moved away from strict jihadist ideology to try to broaden the appeal of his group. The rebranding is also being used to attract support for the offensive, which HTS calls Operation Repelling the Aggression. That name, and its official announcements, avoid jihadist language and Islamist references. Neutral language, according to Mina al-Lami, the jihadist media specialist at BBC Monitoring, is designed to distance what's happening from the jihadist past of HTS and present the offensive as a joint rebel enterprise against the regime. The offensive led by HTS comes out of the splintered political landscape of northern Syria. Much of the northeast is controlled by the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, a group led by Kurds and supported by the United States, which stations around 900 troops in the area. Turkey is a big player, controlling borderlands where it has deployed its own regular troops as well as the militia it sponsors. Sleeper cells drawn from the remnants of Islamic State sometimes mount deadly ambushes on roads through the Syrian desert. Reports from Syria say that the rebel forces have captured significant supplies of military equipment, including helicopters, and are pressing on towards Hama, the next significant city on the road to Damascus. Without a doubt, the regime and its allies will be working to steady themselves and to hit back, especially with air power. The rebels do not have an air force, though in another sign of the way that unmanned aerial vehicles are revolutionizing warfare, there are reports that they used a drone to kill a senior regime intelligence official. The situation in Aleppo remained fluid as the day progressed, as armed opposition forces appeared to continue their rapid advance. Pro-Syrian government social media channels have disputed the extent of the opposition's advance. Two videos posted on pro-government Telegram channels purportedly show empty squares in northwest Aleppo, as men claim that there are no rebels in that part of the city. In an attack earlier Friday, An artillery shell struck Aleppo University's student housing, killing 4 people, according to Syria's state news agency, SANA, which blamed opposition factions for the attack. The spokesperson for the rebel groups Hassan Abdulghani refuted the accusations by the Syrian government media as baseless lies. An Aleppo University employee, speaking anonymously for security reasons, confirmed that an artillery shell hit the second floor of a dormitory with students inside at the time. A video circulating on social media, geolocated by CNN, shows young men running out of a dormitory in Aleppo University campus and carrying an injured individual. On Thursday, at least 15 civilians, including 6 children and 2 women, were killed, and 36 others were injured in airstrikes and shelling on rebel-held areas in Aleppo and Idlib countryside, according to the White Helmets, a volunteer rescue group. Iranian state media said that an Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps (IRGC) Brigadier General Kiyumars Pourhashemi was also killed in the city. In a call with his Syrian counterpart to discuss the escalation, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi accused the United States and Israel of the reactivation of the rebels and stressed the continued support of Iran to the Syrian government and army. Rebel groups in northwestern Syria say they are pushing towards the city of Hama after taking control of nearby Aleppo in a lightning offensive that started last week. The attempted southern advance on Sunday comes on the 5th day of the surprise rebel offensive as Syrian and Russian forces have launched counterattacks, reportedly pounding opposition-controlled Idlib province and Aleppo with air attacks since Saturday. Government forces under the control of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad have also been fortifying the northern province of Hama, according to the Syrian state news agency, SANA. It reported the army overnight pushed back opposition fighters in its northern countryside. Forces there were being resupplied with heavy equipment and rocket launches, according to SANA. On Sunday, United Nations Special Envoy to Syria, Geir Pedersen, appealed for all stakeholders in the conflict to immediately seek a political resolution. The latest developments pose severe risks to civilians and have serious implications for regional and international peace and security, he said. The rebels have since claimed several strategic victories, including taking control of the supply line town of Khanzir, Aleppo Industrial City, Aleppo's military academy and the Field Artillery College. Formerly known as al-Nusra Front, the Syrian branch of al-Qaeda, HTS has distanced itself from the group while becoming the strongest opposition movement in northwestern Syria. It is still considered a terrorist organization by the United States, Syria and Russia. Russia's military intervention in the country starting in 2015 as well as Iran's 2 years earlier helped to turn the tide of the war in favor of al-Assad. Russia's aerial bombardments of Aleppo then helped government forces take full control of the city in 2016. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was to travel to Damascus on Sunday, telling reporters Tehran would back al-Assad. Jordan's King Abdullah II and United Arab Emirates President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan also expressed solidarity with al-Assad in recent calls with him. Still, Safar said that beyond the confusion and fear, there is also a sense of anticipation among some residents of Aleppo who had lived for years under government control. Pedersen added that there had been a collective failure to bring about a genuine political process, to implement UN Security Council Resolution 2254, which was passed in 2015. That laid out a roadmap for peace, with the principle in the text that the Syrian people will decide the future of Syria. The objective was a future shaped by free elections and a new constitution. But that meant Assad and his family giving up a country that they treated for years as their personal fief. More than 500,000 dead attest to their determination not to let that happen. It is too soon to write the Assad regime off. It has a core of genuine support. Some Syrians see it as the least bad option, better than the jihadists who came to dominate the rebellion. But if other anti-Assad groups, and there are many, rise up, his regime will once again be in mortal danger.